Me.
Hello, good morning. Still morning.
Yep.
Yes. Oh yeah, still morning because you're still at the house.
Yep, exactly. Before lunch.
All right. So we had a good discussion. Um, so there's not, oh, am I on video? I'm not on video. Let's get me on video here. Um, let's fix my screen. One, two, two, two. No, don't only show on one. That was not what I meant to say. Extend. That's so much better. Now I'm blue from the blue Windows background.
Blue screen of death.
Thankfully not that.
I haven't seen a blue screen of death in years. Windows is really good nowadays.
That's true. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh yeah, too bad it can't, my camera lighting can't decide what's going on ever. Okay, so Bogdan didn't like the idea of one language going off and being
Yeah.
different. But he did seem pretty receptive to extending the freeze. He wanted to extend the freeze for one or two other things also. And also he didn't want, I guess he had been talking about to the, I guess, governance, or I don't know where they had those discussions about the timeline, about having this artificial timeline that he had been concerned with, like wanting to make sure that we don't just arbitrarily cut and say, make then some poor decisions or something. So he seemed very supportive of exploring this. He thought that, so the one case that he brought up that he thought that still maybe needed span context was like logging, MDC logging, for example, where you would pass, where MDC, I guess some of the, does log4j not require strings anymore? You can give it an object? I don't know. He seemed to think that you could pass it an object.
Never seen that. At least the
So,
APIs we use only support strings. I don't know if there's separate ones, but doubt it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So so we could, so that's a good thing. The other was with sort of in that same vein of being able to pass something, to someone, like if you were going to pass
Yeah.
these things to some other entity, not to bring the whole span along with it, or not to expose the whole span.
Yeah.
And so the other example he was thinking was like exemplars, which I don't really understand, sort of, but like of correlating, like, I guess, so you would pass that there. So I asked, since if there weren't any, I asked if there weren't any examples now, is that something that we can, we can always add something later if we need something to pass around like that. And he seemed surprised, very receptive of that. Being able to add something later, we can add after GA. The other thought I had after the meeting was sort of tied to a little bit to Nikita's idea of the interface. And having, on span, we could have a get context method that just returns this. but we could do that in a way where the span itself doesn't extend span context, but that it's a separate, like the implementation implements both span and span context. That way we don't pollute.
But then we don't get to simplify the code. It's still gonna all be calling context, right? Like one of the things I liked, for example, like concretely, like the propagators just seem much simpler without the span context there. At least I found them to be much simpler. But
yeah, so I guess what I was thinking there is that would still give people a span context if they wanted it to pass to something else. That would be just like.
And then so like, but we could also like we can extend span context from span. In that case, also to have it inlined. Or that's not a good idea.
I was just trying to. I liked the idea of. I like the idea of hiding. I want to get rid of span context.
Right. If we can't,
so
then
the best way to hide it is don't even put it in the span interface.
Yeah. But then if we have it, then that's another way. I mean, we get some performance benefit out of that, which is nice.
True. Right.
But
right.
it's very boring to always call .get context just to get the trace ID. I found that a lot. So
but I mean, we could still inline. Well, I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
I guess so if we I think the way, is there an issue already for, I know you opened it for merging, but is there one for removing span context?
I didn't do that.
Okay.
It seemed
too
intense.
Unlikely. Yeah. So I think they want to, that's what they want to see, like what it would look like. That would be that actually seems to have more votes, like more momentum than the one that you did submit of making it optional.
So, okay. Surprising. Yeah. So the recommendation is try another PR that removes it completely.
Yeah, and I think talk about the just where, like, talk about where it simplifies things for you, like what you liked about the span, the propagators, and mention I would mention the two examples that Bogdan gave in the meeting today, and we could sync later. I could about the logging, the MDC, and just mention that's not a non-issue because they only take strings, and then the exemplars that we could, if that becomes something that we need this separate thing later, we could add it. And in fact, we could add it in a way that is highly optimized by returning this, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, example, like anything that's relating with other stuff, I would expect that just be in the context anyways, right? And we put a span in the context. So I'm guessing we don't need anything special.
It was not convincing, and Bogdan wasn't super convinced himself.
Yep, just one example.
Which I think was why he liked that idea of
maybe adding it later.
Yeah, that maybe we can remove it now and bring back something later. So I guess what I would say is that if we decide we need it later, it's not going to hurt us. We can implement it.
Yep.
without copying, or I mean with copying, or I don't know, something.
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to think
Try
if
to-
there were other.
And so you think there is a good chance of that being merged?
I do. I
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Yes. And I will go to the spec. What time is the spec meeting tomorrow? Because I can go and fight for it. Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay, 8 a.m. Okay. Yep, I will be there.
Okay. So I'll send out a PR today then.
It might be if you, let's see if our YouTube syncing, how awesome our YouTube syncing is. No, that is not. That's too short. That's only
making their vegetables. For activating is fun. Curious what the code methods are and where they exist. Yeah, I think that was right. The with span used by propagators is one of my concerns. But then I found out that propagated span was added, and I don't know what to do with that.
This is a
Propagated
different
span was added to what?
meeting.
There's now a span class and a propagated span class. Yeah, propagated span is only what was default span before. Basically just a blank span wrapping a span context. Right. This replaces span context. No, it replaces using a separate key for a propagated span, which I don't understand the need for. No, actually it's supposed to be only a replacement for span context. So the keys should be working the same they were working before.
It's too bad the maintainers meeting didn't get uploaded, but some other meeting today did.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It would be nice to.
Oh,
I don't even know if you can hear. I'm sorry. How the
for context,
can sort of hear you.
only use one, because now you only need to store span, not basically. Well, it's because one of them is, I mean, if it's a propagated span, then it's considered different. I think it's because you have less information in a propagated span. Is that the idea? Like you have in a propagated span, you just unpacked. You just unpack some kind of trace context, and you only have that information. And you want to differentiate between that thing versus one you made locally. That seems like a very under the hood thing. Doesn't seem like I'll look into that. Doesn't seem like a thing we end users should care too much about. Yeah, definitely. It just messes up my implementations, and I mean I don't have objects, so it's a little weird. No, I mean, yeah,
Erlang.
Record in Java, when Bogdan proposed we try this out, I was having many doubts because it's not obvious in the beginning. But I promise you that in Java, it simplified our lives. So we're giving it a chance. Yeah, well, I felt like a number of things have been merged into the spec in the last week without getting the kind of discussion that they were getting before.
I did notice that, yeah.
It's like a lot of things have changed, and just very quickly, just because GA is coming up. Yeah, I understand your position, and I think this is why it's very important that this latest change that Bogdan proposed has no prototypes.
So I think there also Bogdan, most of the call was, well, not most. We got started. A long time was spent on the Bogdan's PR, spec PR about the trace context utils.
Mhm.
And I think there were probably updates on that issue. But I think there was no resolution. But with the hour ended, and we had 2 minutes to talk about span context, which luckily then people stayed on for another like 15, 20 minutes. So we got to have discussion about that. I was sitting on the sideline. I was like, please, I want to talk about span context. I want to know if this is possible.
Yep. Well, okay, so I'll send the PR. I'll try to address some of those points proactively. And
Yeah, I guess, yeah, and even if you don't, they'll, yeah, just to get the discussion going. And I'll go to I'll be at the spec meeting tomorrow and see what has to be done. I was trying to think, what did Morgan wanted to decide by tomorrow's meeting if we were going to do it. But Bogdan kind of was pushing back on this artificial deadline timeline.
and so technically right now it is frozen. And it might be unfrozen.
I'm not sure it's technically frozen. Well, yes. Okay, so what they said today was it is frozen, except Bogdan agreed like that it's frozen, but if there's bugs, then, you know, then we would address them. But that they did, they would take this issue and the two, let's check the maintainer meeting notes. Maybe somebody took notes. That would be remarkable. No, of course not. So yeah, so they wanted that. The PM types want to time box this. Requirements, delay trace. How much do we delay trace spec freeze? Yeah, the notes aren't great, but there's 3 issues at play currently. One is Bogdan's trace context utils. One is the is secure or is unsecure gRPC default. And one is the span context.
Yeah. So for Bogdan's context thing do you know what the discussion was like for that? I'm just curious whether it leaves us open for more options like exposing it on the span instead of a util class, or it seemed like Bogdan was okay with that, but I wonder if there was more.
Bogdan was okay with with exposing.
For example, like my proposal, he seemed like it's a reasonable proposal, and my understanding was that would still be within spec, but I'm not exactly sure.
So Bogdan was wanting this to be a he doesn't like that there's multiple different ways to get the get things. I guess most of the discussion is on the issue probably.
Yeah.
Right, so there's that. Reasons to have span tracer Matt, okay. We talked about this proposal. Bogdan seemed to like it. So Bogdan has been thinking about context injection and the scope. So not having the problem with the trace context utils classes, you can't inject into it. So the tracer, having these methods on the tracer with default, I mean, this is default. Oh, you understand this better than I do. I'm sure. I don't even know what language this is supposed to represent. But yeah, either being able to having option to pass in context explicitly or implicit. This would not create a scope. This would just return a context. And then so you would still have to put that into scope separately. Which I guess none of that.
One of the weird things about this is that most users don't use tracers, right? Or maybe that's only a Java thing.
Yeah, Ted brought that up. And Ted is proposing a default tracer.
Yeah, I think I've seen a bit of that. Yeah. So that would make some more sense. Yeah, I still sort of like span.current. But definitely, I mean, that being static, that still has the same problem with like unit tests and whatnot. But as far as a easy to use API, if you want to get a span, just get it from the span rather than dealing with tracer, which you've never seen before. That's my current brainstorming, but maybe I just have to send a draft PR with that.
Current. And now, I don't think we've really thought through injection anyway, so I don't really see that that's something worth altering for until we like actually concertedly make an effort for that. But the span, I think that's what Bogdan would say is a span dot get current is not going to support injection.
Yep.
What's your feeling about injection for context, basically for a context manager kind of a class versus static access to the thread local? What do you do in Armiria?
In Armiria, we usually just use a real request context in the real thread local, even in tests. It's not that hard to push and pop in a before each, after each type of thing in the worst case. So, I mean, I've never found it too limiting to have these statics.
I see. So you do have the static, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
good.
Armiria, getting the current context is a static method. There's no other way. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same as gRPC in that way. Yeah,
that would be good. I wish we could get you and Bogdan in the same room sometimes, because that would be good feedback. I could add that to the meeting notes for agenda for Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, tracer, it's sort of nice that can be injected because creating spans is more complicated. Just the current context is not such a complex thing, so it being injectable isn't that important. That being said, in my framework, the one I've linked to a few times, I do always also, yeah, I do also always add it into the DI context. Not so, yeah, thinking about that more. But yeah, in tests, I still always use a real context. That's just for convenience. Because we have, so that framework works by having a, like I mentioned a bit in that comment, like your producer graph, your injection graph is scoped to that request. So in that case, when you can just inject context because it's all scoped into that request, that's just convenient. But it's not a mock context or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's also not thread local lookup every time. It's just once at the beginning, and then that's tied to the graph execution.
Whoa. The graph execution. Oh, because you control all the threads. You control all the threading. That's why.
Mm,
That users. That's why users don't need
and
to
then, yeah,
propagate it ever.
and I set the threading to that context-aware executor, yeah. So even if they don't, like the propagation happens thanks to that. And then also the context, if
Right.
you need it, like I do inject context in those graphs just because it's more convenient than calling .current.
Into the graphs.
So the graphs are designed as just methods that are connected by dependency injection. So once one method is complete, it'll call the other one with those parameters. And you can also have constant or sort of graph scoped parameters as well that are available. And so those methods, if they need to use the context, I would generally just add it as a method parameter, which Dagger
that's something that's something users
can do. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. I see. So users can use that to do manual propagation so that they could still call .current, but that just saves the thread local lookup.
Exactly. Yeah. That's basically the only reason. Yeah. 200 thread locals is a lot.
I've also done that in GlowRoot of going and killing thread local access and passing things around explicitly wherever possible.
Yeah.
I think technically though, I think that doing that second lookup right away is probably going to be fast. I mean, way faster because the memory is hot.
Maybe
it's that first one that
Yeah.
But still, I like it. May as well favor less.
I need to get going.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
cool.
So
all right.
I think I know what to do. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for taking that on. I really liked that change also. So I'm all in. I will fight for it.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.